Ugandan opposition leader Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, known by his stage name Bobi Wine, is challenging President Yoweri Museveni's election victory at the country's Supreme Court. Uganda held elections last month, after which allegations of irregularities have been made by opposition figures. Uganda's longtime President Yoweri Museveni was re-elected, having won almost 59% of the vote, and Bobi Wine trailing with about 35%. The question, though, is this the end of the story? And what lies ahead for Uganda? Well, I spoke to Uganda's High Commissioner to South Africa, Barbara Nekesa Oundo, and I began by asking her about the recent elections, saying that some people have described them as not being free and fair.
Saying that their comments that the just concluded elections were not free and fair, I think that is far from the truth. The just concluded elections, parliamentary and presidential elections, these were held on the 14th of January. And lucky enough, or fortunately enough, and we are grateful for that, we had observer missions, both the continental, the regional, and the local observers, because we had a team from the African Union, there was a team from the East African community, and also the civil society organizations, the local observers engaged in this. And the reports have been given. Many of them characterize this election as a free and fair one. And I think this was evident. This was evident. So it would be far from the truth for anyone to assert that that election was not free and fair.
I suppose when outsiders looking in see the opposition leader, Mr. Kyagulanyi, arrested several times during the election campaigning and then detained in his house for days. He had to go to court to get the military and the police security to leave his property and allow freedom of movement again. And then we saw more than 54 people die after protests. These don't point to a free space.
As we analyze these events, it's always important that we interest ourselves with what caused what, you know? It's not a good sense of judgment for you to only look into what has happened, but what caused it. Because when we look at the arrests and the confrontations between some candidates and the police during the electioneering, there were causes, there were things that happened that led to that. Because remember that Uganda, just like any other country around the world, is still grappling with the COVID-19 virus. And then we have an election at hand. But the Electoral Commission went ahead to invite stakeholders. It invited the candidates, their representatives, to really have in order what they called the campaign standard proceeding, standard operating procedures, what you call here the preventive measures. So these people, the Electoral Commission and these actors, the election actors, they sat down and agreed on how to carry on the campaigns. First, it was an idea, or it was agreed that to restrict the spread of the virus, to minimize it, in order not to overwhelm the health facilities, we need to minimize the numbers of those that are engaged in campaign meetings. Because they had earlier on agreed to have 70 people have campaign meetings, whereby after a candidate has interacted with these campaign agents 70, the 70 would go and again interact in non-physical means with the electorate, now using the radios, using the flyers, the banners, and so on. But this number was revised from 70 to 200. So it was supposed to be 200 people in a regulated manner with a candidate, either presidential or parliamentary, and then after agreeing on the message to the electorate, it is these 200 that will now go and use the non-physical means. But looking at the trend of things, because we had the presidential nominations on the 2nd and 3rd of November 2020, starting on the days of the nominations, we had some candidates violating these very guidelines that they started with the Electoral Commission and agreed to, you know. From the nominations, we saw candidates addressing the populace on the main roads. This population is gathered, these people are gathered without masks. Some candidates also don't have masks, interacting with them, encouraging people to crowd in such ways. So these are the things that caused confrontations between some candidates and the other campaign candidates. Not all of them were flouting these guidelines, but some of them. And those are the ones that got on the wrong side of the law with the police. Hindering candidate Kyagulanyi from getting out of his residence. I think you must have been following these elections on social media. There were words that were being given out, statements from these political actors, that we are not going to accept anything other than a win from Byabakama. Byabakama is our chairperson of Electoral Commission. With politics, when you step into politics, have two sides of the coin on your table. It's either a win or a loss. So if someone says it's either I win or I don't accept this, that is not very good. And then there was another follow-up statement which says that if they don't announce what we expect them to announce, you can't presume that you already know what should be announced even before an election takes place. So there was a statement of, we are going to have plan B. There will be plan B if they don't announce what we expect them to announce. So with the security forces of any country that is always on standby to ensure that they are in charge of the affairs of the country, they interpreted the plan B as one of inciting violence in case things do not turn out in their favor. So first of all, government had to put in place, they had to deploy forces. You saw on social media, there were forces in the capital, there were forces in the rural areas, but this was to restore that assurance amongst the people that the campaigns are going to be free and fair, but above all, peaceful. And it was also a message to those that intended to cause any form of chaos. They interpreted Plan B, that please keep away. And as you saw, I just mentioned here that some candidates to nomination and after, people just gather. People just gather in spontaneous. You don't need to call on them. So stopping a person from getting out, stopping candidate Kyagulanyi from getting out of his residence, it was one of the measures that government put in place, or the security forces put in place to ensure that there is peace after the elections. Actually, we are soon getting out of the aftermath and even thereafter. So it's a preventive measure to prevent any chaos, anything that may result from the famous Plan B that they had heard about.
But the courts didn't agree with that view, did they? Because they eventually ordered the security forces to leave his residence and to restore his freedom.
Yes, stopping him from getting out, I think it served the purpose. But the prolonged stay, the courts pronounced themselves, and Uganda is a country that really is ruled or governed by the rule of law. The prolonged stay, yes, that is what the lawyers of candidate Kyagulanyi were protesting in court, that they were limiting his rights of movement. And when the courts pronounced themselves and ordered the forces to withdraw, they withdrew. But their deployment had really served the purpose. We ensured that there was peace after the elections and there's still normalcy within the country. Because we believe as a democratic country, Uganda is a country that upholds democratic values. It's after the election, a peaceful one like it was. If you have any grievances, the next step should be the courts of law. And the forces have already showed you that after the ruling of the court telling them to withdraw, they actually withdrew. So we believe in presenting our matters that we are not really satisfied with, our dissatisfaction, addressing or tabling it before the courts of law. And I think that is what they have done.
Are people able to freely express themselves in Uganda, even if that means criticizing the president and criticizing his government and perhaps just wanting something different?
Yes, Peter. Ugandans can freely criticize the government and go back home and sleep. I think this can be attested to by anybody who has lived in Uganda for at least a week. A week is enough. A week will show you, because in Uganda we have over 300 radio stations. We have quite a number of televisions. television channels. There are quite so many. So this one shows you that there is really that free expression, freedom of speech. Anyone can go to a radio station, criticize or offer alternative policy ways to the government and go home without anyone bothering them. It's unlike how it was in the past. We had regimes whereby you go to a radio station, speak against the sitting government, tomorrow you would not have your lunch. But this is what is happening in Uganda. There is freedom of speech in Uganda. And that is explanatory or evidenced by the number of media stations that we have, the journalists that we have. This is all on ground, and I can attest to it that really there is freedom of speech in Uganda.
All right, so then how does one explain shutting down social media? Because that is a platform for freedom of expression.
Oh, Ndugu, Peter, I will revisit my explanation that I just made a few seconds ago, that the famous Plan B was one which was interpreted by the security forces that there will be incitement of violence if elections are not announced to anybody's expectation. So shutting down the internet, you have seen what happens with social media. A person will wake up and announce, God forbid, and announce Peter dead. And another one will say, no, Peter is not dead. I've just seen him a few seconds ago. So people can abuse the media, by the way. So shut it temporary. By the way, this was not a complete shutdown. It was a temporary shutdown. Shutting down this social media or access to internet for these few days, it was to ensure that nobody interrupts with the democratic process. Because we are going into an election, leave people to elect, and the Electoral Commission, which is charged with the mandate to announce the outcomes of the elections, come up and announce elections. Or else you would have more than 1,000 command centers. This one is announcing this result, this one is announcing this one, and you can imagine the amount of chaos this can cause in a country. So this was still a preventive measure to throw our country in chaos. We have had people internally, externally, trying to see that they really fuel chaos in Uganda. So as a government which thinks that peace is important, you cannot even have the right to vote if there is no peace in the country. So a government should always be up in arms to ensure that there is peace in the country. So some of these pillars were important to be picked and preventive measures put in place, one of which was temporarily shutting down the internet for those number of days to allow an uninterrupted democratic process to take place.
All right, so the internet was shut down, it's been restored, but the social media platforms are still shut. We believe they've been closed for nearly 3 weeks now, and that citizens have to use things like VPN to access social media. It's 3 weeks later. Why would they still...
Peter, I think they're just restoration technical challenges, but it has been restored. I think they're just technical challenges as it is restored.
All right, let's talk about one other case then, perhaps. Stella Nyanzi, Dr. Stella Nyanzi, an activist. She's fled Uganda now. She says that political persecution by the Ugandan government has caused her to leave. She was jailed for a poem that she put on Facebook. And in that poem, she was criticizing the president and, in fact, wished that he hadn't been born because her view was that he's a dictator. Is that something that you jail someone for 18 months for?
I have not really gotten so... I'm not aware if Nyanzi has fled the country. That is something I'm learning of now, but I think I can't speculate in that line.
All right, but does it make sense that somebody could be jailed for 18 months for criticizing the president and wishing that he wasn't born?
Not really. I don't think Nyanzi was ever jailed for criticizing the president. Nyanzi was arrested, arraigned before the courts of law, and it's the courts that found her guilty of a number of charges, not necessarily criticizing the president, and that's what happened, not that she was jailed necessarily for criticizing the president.
All right, let's talk post-elections now. The president has got another mandate. How does he bring the country together? Because clearly there is a divided nation. Young people followed this wave that was caused by Bobi Wine, Robert Kyagulanyi, and the president got just over 50% of the vote, which means there's a huge chunk in the country that perhaps view the country in a different way. How is Uganda going to bring people together? What's the president saying?
Yeah, our president, in fact, made a communication, what I would call the president-elect address, his victory speech. It was a good one, filled with hope. From his campaign trail, he categorically put it that the biggest challenge that he realized we face right now is unemployment, which is not only peculiar to Uganda, but Uganda has the biggest population. About 78% of our people are young people. So, and we have over 30 universities. These ones are channeling out graduates year in, year out in thousands. And not all of them can get these public service jobs, the government jobs, because we have approximately about less than 500,000. And then these people are graduating year in, year out in hundreds and hundreds of thousands. So we cannot have all of them absorbed by government. So he put that out as one of the biggest challenge. And when you're following the campaign trail, I think all the opposition candidates, all those people that were following the trails, the supporters, are all young people. So where is the problem? He gave us hope. One, he had understood what the problem is. The young people need jobs. So he has given the country hope that during the next 5 years, he's going to concentrate on fully industrializing the country because he feels industries can help in providing more jobs to really reduce the unemployment rate in the country. And I think that's one thing that we welcome. He mentioned turning revamping our agriculture from the peasant that it is to commercial agriculture, not having people only farm for eating, but also farm for eating and also feeding the markets for money, households' income. He also talked about increasing on our infrastructure because he has done well during the previous years that our country is now fully tarmacked. We have tarmac roads from one zone or one region of the country, from one border to one border. Let me say maybe the South Sudanese border up to the Rwandan border, from Congo, DRC border to the Kenyan border. We have roads that are connecting us region to region, district to district. Now what he wants to focus on are these roads that are connecting our markets to the plantations. Maybe I would translate to feeder roads. Because yes, we want to fully commercialize agriculture, but how do our people get the goods from their plantations to the markets? The markets he has done very well. During this campaign, he was commissioning markets in almost all the key districts across the country. So we have the markets, we have what to put in the markets, but now he's going to put more emphasis on the infrastructure improvement. We have a number of dams that are under construction, electricity dams, and these ones, once they are fully completed, I think we shall be able to export electricity to the East African community and still remain with a good surplus, enough for our demand and still have a surplus. He has put in place what we call the Emyoga. There is a program which is called Emyoga. Emyoga, this is a program whereby we are skilling the youth in various activities and empowering them also financially with startups. This started with the youth fund. There is now the women's fund. There is now this one. Emyoga actually cuts across all categories of our people, those who are the youth, the elderly. So there are different funds that he has put in place. And then the hospitals, he's also putting more effort in ensuring that they increase on the hospitals, and also so that we have hospitals in an arm length distance. Yeah? When it comes to maternal affairs, for us, we need hospitals as close as possible, because when you need a mother to give birth, you never know, it might be at midnight. So you would not really need a distance for you to access a health facility. So we need our children to go to school. He mentioned about it. He is going to ensure that the country is continuously peaceful and ensure that our children go to school and return back home every day without any problem. So there are a number of things to ensure that they guard against any external aggression on our territorial integrity. So there is free education, and he's putting more emphasis in this. So the victory speech was filled with lots and lots of plans, which built really very strong hope amongst our people. And we anticipate the next 5 years are going to be those where we shall be seeing Uganda move from where we are to a middle-income status.
All right, so a hopeful future. You mentioned health and schools. I see that the president announced that schools will be opening, and this is nearly after a year. How have you been able to manage the COVID-19 pandemic, and what's the rollout plan in terms of vaccines? Are they on their way?
With the management of the COVID-19 pandemic, actually this one lies more on the people. It's the people that can play the biggest role in reducing the spread of COVID-19. When this challenge reached Uganda, I think our lockdown, the first lockdown was announced on the 19th of March 2020. This is when the president first announced the first lockdown. He has been on television several times, you know. Even the children in homes began saying, why is it that it's the president that is the news anchor these days, every day? We no longer see other news anchors, because he made several speeches to the country, appealing to them, giving them the SOPs, the preventive measures, do this, wash your hands, masks. So this one has paid off in the long run. If you interested yourself in his speech yesterday, he was saying the numbers, the new cases per day have now reached 50. So that reduction, we say a big thank you to the people living within the borders of Uganda. So they have played a very big role. As far as the vaccines are concerned, we shall also be ordering from India. We are expecting the first order will be over 18 million vaccines. And like they have normally educated us that you need approximately 2 doses of this vaccine. So there we shall be targeting about 9 million beneficiaries, and the president has advised that let's look at people who are frontline workers, like the health workers. We expect, I think, around April to be receiving the first batch, so that people can be fully immunized. We hope with the vaccine on the way, around April, everything shall return to normalcy.
All right. Okay. So another hopeful story in terms of combating this pandemic. Perhaps as we close off, you are an ambassador, so you're out of the country. So let's talk a little bit about foreign policy. What's Uganda's vision in terms of, because you've done a lot of work in the region, what's the plan for the next 5 years, and also, I guess, the continent at large?
Well, I'll begin with your last statement, the continent at large. When it comes to diplomacy, I think things are now better. We have moved from the political diplomacy. It's now economic commercial diplomacy. And we are looking at what we can do as countries to grow ourselves and to grow our continent. I would like to use this opportunity to appreciate our heads of state, especially those that have ratified to the Continental Africa Free Trade Area, trade agreement. And I hope this is going to be an opportunity that we should really tap into and discover what is it that Uganda can do with Namibia, Uganda can do with South Africa and Eswatini, respectively, because I believe we have enough to do amongst ourselves and have other people also travel to our continent. So I appreciate this effort, and we look forward. We know this is an opportunity that has opened up, and as missions, we are doing everything possible now to engage our partners, to engage different countries to see whereby how we can identify what we can do together. Then, as Uganda and South Africa, in 2012, 2012, our head of state visited South Africa, and there were a number of agreements that were signed under the Joint Corporate Commission, and we have had follow-ups. So many of them have come to fruition. We are benefiting from a number of them, and we look at March 2021 as when Uganda now shall be hosting the second JCC. We look forward at strengthening also our regional cooperation that is under the ESC, and also ensuring that as an economic bloc, East Africa, we offer a market to the African continent, and we also offer investment opportunities to the rest of the country, to the rest of the continent. With investments, we have been doing very well. But when I came, because the FDI, the foreign direct investment from South Africa into Uganda was approximately $680 million US. But as of 2018, 2019, we had reached 1.3 billion US dollars of foreign direct investments from South Africa into Uganda. And mainly these ones were boosted because of the Black empowerment. Most of our people who got monies from this program, Uganda was what I would call a one-stop center. They quickly moved into Uganda. If they couldn't identify what to do there, that's when they could go elsewhere. So we have been doing very, very well with our economic commercial diplomacy. I just hope that we are able to sort out the issue of the pandemic, and we progress. When it comes to travel to Uganda, our visa regime is so liberalized. You can apply for a visa to Uganda online, and for as long as you have that approval, the online approval, you travel with it. Even if you don't have the visa, it can be issued at the point of entry. And that is Entebbe if you're flying, and the others who are using the borders, respectively, it can be handled at the point of entry. So we have tried to liberalize that as much as we can. And we just hope that as we go on, let's also have our ordinary passport holders given visas on arrival for 30 days, for 90 days, so that we can move. And I think these are one of the issues that we shall advance during the upcoming JCC, which I hope, unfortunately, may be virtual, because we Africans, we believe in the physical interaction. I must talk to Peter, but as I walk away, I must know how tall Peter is. So that when they ask me, I'll say, I think he was averagely this. But when it comes to virtual matters, we are all of the same height, because we are appearing before a camera. So these are some of the things that we shall be engaging our partners in South Africa to see that also the ordinary passport holders receive waivers. So in many ways, we are looking at how to further in diplomacy, how to further our Pan-Africanism, how to further our regional cooperations, to strengthen them, how to further strengthen our African, the continental engagements. And we see that these RECs will lead to a very fruitful African integration. And I think it should do well if it's in the area of economics, like it has been put. It will help us to solve the challenges that we have on the continent, especially those of our young people who are in lack of jobs.